What do you think we should fight for in 2019?
So everybody keeps talking about economics, which I think is I guess as people of color, we know that economic oppression is our greatest enemy. So I'm right there with that. The everyday wage for the everyday man is a very big on my list. But one thing that I can be a little bit idealistic. One of the things that I dream about is I want politicians that get into office that fight for political literacy for the average man. Because one of the things that I keep coming across is when I talk to people, when I go out and I see people, is that people really aren't informed. They don't have the information. That's why I love this show. Like when I talk to Young Turks followers, shout out to the ones who came out to Arizona when I was performing, and they love the Young Turks because they feel like, one guy was like, I read this newspaper, I watch this outlet, and I watch this, and then I watch the Young Turks and I just get a story. And they're like, everything else has become partisan. So I just think that one of the things I like about Alejandra Ocasio is that she explains things in a way that the average person who could be a maid or could be the flower shop owner in the Bronx can understand, so they feel empowered, right? They feel like they have the information and they can make informed decisions, and that's why they feel so proud that they elected her, because they felt like they made an informed decision. But I think that, for me, everything is gonna always be about economics. As she talked about real estate, getting money out of politics to me is such a big deal, because my people, and when I say my people, I'm talking about people in marginalized groups that come from lower income neighborhoods. We suffer the most when it comes to the man, because that we are the epitome of the have-nots. So really getting that dirty money out of there and exposing, because that's one of the things that I really like about this group of progressives that are in. They're not just in here doing the job, they're exposing the corruption as they go and really explaining to people what's been happening to them. And I think that gives people fuel and power to really believe that they can have change. And so for me, education is at the top of the list. I was talking to someone in Arizona who was telling me about books that the school books that they have in a district the books are like from the 1990s. You want to keep people down. You make sure that they don't get the information that they need. They don't know where they come from. They don't have a sense of history. And I'd like to see more women in politics, because I think women are fair and just. Not all of them, but.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true. There's certainly a variety, but they have been doing exceedingly well and wonderfully progressive lately, and I want to talk about that in a second too. But you mentioned a couple of things there I wanted to touch on. So Rosario Dawson was supposed to join Nomiki there, and she was there. We just couldn't get to her in time. And if you notice, Nomi said why she came out, because she grew up in an area that Aida's talking about and Nomi mentioned, and she was poor growing up. And what's great about Rosario is she didn't forget.
That's right.
Right, and a lot of people would get up and then they want to burn the bridge behind them. Look, I'll give you the perfect example. The guy who stood up for the Saudis just over the last couple of days was Paul Ryan. He wanted to keep the war going in Yemen, and he found a way to defeat Ro Khanna and Ro Khanna's proposal in the House to end the war, or at least our support for the war. And his father passed away, and when he did, his family got Social Security, and it allowed him to go to college. It allowed him to eat, live, go to college. In a sense, it saved his life. Okay, and so what did he do afterwards? He said, "Oh, good, thanks, I appreciate it. I'll take this bridge now and I'll throw it overboard." That's right. And whatever helped me, I'm going to burn to the ground. So he gave a $2 trillion tax cut to the rich, along with Donald Trump. He also helped Bush get his tax cuts, et cetera. And then when they asked him, well, how are you going to make it up? There's now a $2 trillion hole in the deficit. He said, entitlement reform. We have to reform Social Security and Medicare. The same Social Security that saved his life, he now wants to reform. Reform means cut. You guys paid into it your whole life, and he's going to cut it. So there's wonderful heroes like Ocasio-Cortez and Rosario Dawson. Aida Rodriguez, wait a minute. I see a pattern here.
Puerto Ricans.
Yeah. From now on, only Puerto Rican women in Congress.
But I'm gonna tell you why. Because we come from a commonwealth. We come from America's bitch. You understand? we know what it feels like, and we know we understand what it means to be a part of a system that you belong to, but you really don't belong to. And I do agree with those programs being reformed, but I believe they should be reformed for the benefit of the people who need them, because there are problems with, the food stamp program and the welfare to work program, because a lot of those programs are set up to keep people down. They're not set up to there's nobody in there really giving people access to information and education so that they can get on their feet. And yes, we can't forget where we come from. We have to be collective thinkers. And that's one of the things that I admire about Shaquille O'Neal. When he voted once for the Democratic Party when he was here with the Lakers. I forgot which election it was. He was being interviewed and they said, "Hey, why did you vote Democrat? You're a millionaire." And he said, "Because I'm the only millionaire in my family and I have to be a collective thinker. And when I vote, I have to think about my aunts and my uncles in New Orleans who don't have what I have." And I just think that that's what you're saying. We have to be collective thinkers, because if not, we're gonna perish,
Well, I'll match your basketball star with my basketball star.
Okay.
Story, and that's Charles Barkley, who thought used to think about it exactly the opposite way. So he was a Republican and he'd vote Republican, and his grandma once asked him, "Hey, Charles, the Republicans are only for the rich. Why do you vote for them?" And he said, "Grandma, I am rich." Okay, but then now if you notice, I said former Republican because. So then they asked Barkley, "So why'd you stop being a Republican?" He's like, "Oh, I was a Republican until they went nuts." Right? And he's like, "I didn't sign up for that." Right? He's like, "Look, I'm as selfish as the next guy, but I didn't sign up for like torture and crazy stuff, right? And wars on top of wars, etc." He's like, "No, I'm out. I didn't sign up for this."
If Uncle Chuck says you're crazy, then you crazy, because he stands on the line of crazy daily.
That's right. And by the way, speaking of strong Puerto Rican women, I just met at the Sanders Institute Carmen Yulín.
That's my girl. She's here?
She's actually coming to LA in January, and
okay,
she might even come on the show. I can't promise it. I don't know, right?
I'll push her a little bit. Let me tell you that when we were sending stuff to Puerto Rico, the mayor was like, "Text me, and I'll make sure that the stuff gets where it needs to go." And I texted her, and she responded.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. She's amazing. And one of her staffers told me, like, because she just gave this fiery speech. And I'm like, "Oh, I want her on the show." And they're like, "Now look, she sometimes has no filter." I'm like, "Perfect."
Yes.
Perfect. That's exactly what we want. That's TYT written all over it, right? You're right, man. Strong Puerto Rican women for the win. Like out of nowhere, you guys are storming out of the gate, galloping and leading progressives in this country.
We have one in the Supreme Court too. We got one.
Oh, that's right, Sotomayor.
Yeah.
Jeez, and Lord mercy, when did you guys take over?
We're on our way. The white guys are melting on Twitter, but we are on our way.
So I never put two and two together before. Okay, it's a plot. But now the right wing's gonna be on it like, "Wait a minute."
We're gonna be on the watch list.
So, but to what you said about education, so like you said, there's kind of two things that you emphasize. One is education for everybody, kids, et cetera, get them the right education, get them the right books. Unfortunately, that actually also goes back to real estate, the point that nobody was making. So I remember thinking when I was growing up, I grew up in a nice suburb, East Brunswick, New Jersey. And we spent a huge amount of money getting lights on our stadium in the high school because we wanted to be cool, like the kids down in Texas, and play Friday night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then we'd go to Perth Amboy, which is a minority town and much poorer, and they had a dirt field. Like they didn't have grass on their field. Okay. And we'd all get torn up. But they got torn up every day. Right? That's where they practiced. That's where they played. Right. And I naively asked, I'm like, why do we have lights and they don't even have grass, right? What I didn't realize back then as a kid is because they do it based on your district, right? Based on your area, and nobody's interested in sharing, right? There's no East Brunswick sharing with Perth Amboy, and if you try to make that happen, they're like, "No way, no way." Okay, that's for my kids, not for your kids. And there's something fundamentally wrong with that system because it obviously reinforces wealth inequality. So if you live in a really rich town, your schools are going to be amazing. All of your facilities are going to be amazing. And if you live in a poor town, your schools are going to be disastrous. And you can't afford private schools, you don't have any choices, etc. And so, but the second part is also equally true and very similar to what Alonso said. We got to educate people about the issues. And so the example I keep using, Ida, is in this last election, there was 2 ballot issues, both raising minimum wage in Arkansas and Missouri, okay? Both very red states, and in fact in Missouri, they just voted out Claire McCaskill and put a Republican in the Senate. And in Arkansas, they passed raising minimum wage by 62%, in Missouri by 68%. And then they turned around and voted for Republicans. Why? Because nobody told them that the Republicans are against higher wages, and Democrats, generally speaking, are for higher wages, right?
Look at all the people who didn't know that Obamacare was the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, you know, my favorite deception on that was Mitch McConnell when he was running for re-election in Kentucky. In the last 2 weeks, he used all his money that he got from his donors to run ads saying that he's for Connect, which is the health care in Kentucky. It's Obamacare.
It's Obamacare.
It's Obamacare in Kentucky. And Mitch McConnell, who tried to repeal and replace Obamacare 50 times, bragged about how he was for the Obamacare in Kentucky. Why? Because they just deceive people. And a lot of times the Democrats don't fight back. So people don't know. I mean, again, another one of my favorite signs of all time in politics was when they riled up the Tea Party and they're like, oh yeah, the bailout of the banks is terrible, and the Koch brothers sent the buses. They're like, all right, so how long before we get to Wall Street? People on the bus say, and Koch brothers are like, we're not going to Wall Street. Okay, no, you're never going to protest at Wall Street. You're going to turn that bus around, and we're going to go protest against Obamacare. And one of the guys held up a sign that said, get your government hands off my Medicare. Medicare's a government program. Okay, that's crazy, but they don't know. They really don't know. It's amazing.
And listen, as a comedian, it's fun to watch, but as a citizen, it's sad because you're like, what? And the only thing I wanted to say also was we got to take care of our homeless people. When you talk about real estate, right? So we have people putting notes on our doors because we have an open lot in our neighborhood, and they want to create a place for homeless families. And my neighborhood, they're losing their minds. They're like, we don't want this. And of course, I'm voting for it because I'm like, you want them on the street? But what I want to say is when we talk about these horrible fires, because we run the homeless people into the forest, into the woods, and they build these encampments in there, and then they get cold and they set these fires, and now all these houses burn down. It's as, like they said in The Lion King, the circle of life. Everything is connected whether you want it to be connected or not. And if we don't take care of our people, then the planet will take care of us.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden the incredibly lavish mansions burn down. Right? Because fires don't know the difference between poor people and rich people.
That's right.
The fires don't have donors. So they don't know. Fires come for everyone. Hurricanes come for everyone.
That's right.
And so I know you could, hire your own fire department if you're Kanye and Kim Kardashian.
That's right.
But at some point that doesn't work either. So we're all in this together. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.